Good news, bad news in the week that was. Tuesday marked the end of Ontario's emergency stay-at-home orders for 27 health regions, except for Toronto, Peel, York, and North Bay Parry Sound, which will remain under the stay-at-home order at least until February 22nd, with the rest of Ontario returning to the government's original region-by-region approach under the COVID-19 response framework, a 5-tier color-coded system. However, Doug Ford wanted to be clear that his province is still going to have the most restrictive restrictions right across the country. Again, demonstrating that this is more of a government ploy to calm growing sentiment and resistance against lockdowns than an actual move towards ending the lockdowns. Something that Toronto's Chief Medical Staff Dr. Eileen Devia made plain on Wednesday during her press conference, in which she insisted that the province extended the emergency stay-at-home order for at least another 2 weeks, citing variants of concern from South Africa, Brazil, and the UK as the need to extend the government's tyranny, stating that Ontarians won't accept a third emergency stay-at-home lockdown, so we should just keep extending this one. Something that we pointed out a few weeks ago on the show would happen, and that these stay-at-home orders would now be a continuous part of the new normal we have to look forward to, as our health officials continue to assert their right to be our new overlords in the name of protecting us from COVID-19, as opposed to the government officials elected to serve the public and implement the will of the people. But hey, at least we know the political elites have our best interests at heart, since while people are suffering due to the consequences of lockdowns, including overdoses, abuse, mental health instability, suicide, destruction of livelihoods, etc., Toronto Mayor John Tory says, what we are trying to avoid is opening only to have to go back to lockdown right when those patios will be opening in May. So yeah, they clearly have their priorities straight. Meanwhile, for those of you living outside of Ontario, you have the federal government citing variants of concern as justification for potentially even further lockdown restrictions in violation of our civil liberties, rights, and freedoms, indicating a second act follow-up to the internment camps may be on the horizon as super reliable national modeling has shown that current restrictions and health measures won't be enough to stop the spread of these variants of concern. Moving on, according to a national poll by Ipsos, which was conducted on February 2nd to February 3rd as a part of Black History Month, in which 1,000 Canadians were surveyed, 54% said that they feel racism is built into the Canadian government and its institutions, with Canadians aged 55 plus being 9 percentage points less likely to believe Canada suffers from systemic racism, with Shane Kahn, who works for Ipsos, concluding that younger people believe Canada suffers from systemic racism much more because there must be a correlation between education and whether you believe there is systemic racism or not. To which we respond, you mean when communists take over your government-run school system and divide everyone into identity groups based on superfluous things like sex, age, gender, sexual orientation, instead of basing it on the content of their character? The result is a generation of people who hold everything is more divided and everything is more ageist and sexist and racist and you don't say. By the way, if there is a correlation between education and belief in systemic racism, then I can't wait to sign up for my spot in the re-education camp. How about you? In surprisingly good news, the provincial government of BC has failed in its attempt to apply for an injunction that would force churches to shut down and allow police to detain any individual they simply suspect of attending or intending to attend a prohibited worship service. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms announced Wednesday, with the province presenting as evidence for this injunction and clear violation of constitutional rights and freedoms under the Charter. 180 COVID-19 cases associated with these religious gatherings out of 74,000 cases province-wide, emboldening the over a dozen BC individuals and faith communities represented by the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms to continue to hold the line and declare Christ alone as head of the church, while the case makes its way through the courts with the hope that it will be heard by the Supreme Court of Canada. Lastly, in somber news, conservative radio icon and American patriot Rush Limbaugh passed away at the age of 70. Rush was beloved by many both in the U.S. and Canada, including us here at the program, for his tireless devotion to God, country, and using his talent on loan from God to defend man's freedom. And we pray that God has mercy on his soul and welcomes him home. And just to get a sense of the magnitude of Rush's impact on America and how dearly he will be missed, let's look back at what was surely a great moment in American history.
Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country. And Rush, in recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity, I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
And this has been Good News, Bad News in the week that was.